You fool! Warren is dead.
Welcome to HorrorBabble. There's just enough time to squeeze a bit of flash fiction in today, folks. This is a curious work by the forgotten 1940s Weird Tales author Betsy Emmons, called Threshold of Endurance. One who has long endured may of a sudden break the bounds of reason. The story was published in the September 1946 edition of Weird Tales. We hope you enjoy it. Threshold of Endurance by Betsy Emmons. This morning she struggled awake slowly, with the feeling that her dreams had been unpleasant, though she could not remember what they were. She looked at the clock, raised herself on her elbow, and called sharply, "Time to get up!" But her husband's rumpled bed was empty. She went to the head of the stairs and called him in a voice that sounded hollow in the quiet house. There was no reply. He must have wakened early, dressed, and gone to the office. She felt annoyed, as she was always annoyed to break in the routine she'd established for her husband and herself. Now she set to work. It was impossible for her to leave her room until she had tidied it, though she felt unlike herself this morning. Her movements seemed to have the strange lightness of fever, and she could not shake off the oppression of the forgotten dream. First, she made her husband's bed, for the sight of an unmade bed was not endurable, and there was something particularly unpleasant about an unmade bed where her husband had been sleeping. Next, she went to his closet, conscientiously overcoming the repulsion she always felt at the faint male smell which somehow could not be banished, though he no longer smoked tobacco, even at the office. His pajamas were on the floor, not placed neatly on a hook as she had taught him. A book lay on the night table beside his bed, one of the odd old things he liked to read. It opened at a bookmarked page, where an underscored paragraph caught her eye. "There is a threshold of endurance with the soul, as well as with the body, and one who has long endured may of a sudden break the bounds of reason, hurling himself against the oppressor with a vigor the greater for his long control." She removed the bookmark. Her husband, she decided, ought to stop reading at night. She took the book with her when she went downstairs, wondering as she descended why the house seemed queer this morning. She was not an imaginative or nervous woman. Surely she must be sick. Downstairs, the living room was cool and orderly, with the window shades drawn as she left them the evening before. She raised each shade and went into the kitchen. On the sink stood an empty glass filled with milk and a plate with sandwich crumbs. Her husband had come downstairs last night to find something to eat and had left his dishes unwashed. There was nothing she disliked so much as dirty dishes. She washed and dried them before she made her coffee. She was drinking the coffee when the back doorbell rang. Looking through the kitchen window, she saw an old tramp. "I'm sorry," she called, "but I have nothing for you." He stood as if he had not heard, and she impatiently turned away. She washed her breakfast dishes, brought the morning paper in from the front porch, and was dusting the living room when she heard a noise in the kitchen. She went to see. The kitchen window was open, and the old tramp was rummaging in the icebox. "I'm going to call the police," she said. He did not seem to hear. As if unaware of her presence, he closed the icebox, tucked the stolen food under his arm, unlatched the back door, and walked out. She watched with helpless anger, for he had not even seemed frightened. She moved to the telephone to call the police, then stopped, putting a hand to her forehead, as memory nagged vaguely. Last night at midnight, she had awakened and heard her husband in the kitchen. She had put on her neat wrapper, gone downstairs, stood in the kitchen doorway, and said, This is a bad habit. It is unnecessary and wasteful, and bad for your stomach." She had gone upstairs without waiting for his answer, and he had followed without washing his dishes. And then something else had happened. What was it? Or was she merely haunted by that dream? Glancing toward the sink, she saw that his milk-filmed glass and plate with sandwich crumbs stood there unwashed, just as they had stood when she first came into the kitchen that morning. But she had washed them. Surely she had washed them. She frowned, not understanding, trying to remember what had happened after her husband followed her upstairs. She went into the living room. The shades were down, drawn for the night, as if she had never touched them. Through the window, she saw the morning paper lying on the porch exactly as it had lain there earlier. But it was impossible. Frightened now, she ran upstairs to the bedroom. On the night table was the book her husband had been reading, with the bookmark still in place, though she knew she had taken the book downstairs. The words she had read thrummed in her brain. "One who has long endured may of a sudden break the bounds of reason, hurling himself against the oppressor." Her husband's bed was unmade, exactly as it had been when she awoke. Everything was as it had been. And, remembering suddenly what had happened when her husband followed her upstairs the night before, she understood why she felt strange and bodiless, why the house remained untouched by her hands. She looked toward her own bed for the first time that morning, knowing already what she would find there, knowing that her own body, which would never again control the external world, lay sprawled and lifeless, with a red gash across its throat. If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below. After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time,